It's so great to be back at some sort of event. It's like I've been in Cluj multiple times already, and I just have to say it's a lot better meeting people in person. So thanks for everybody who made it. What a lot of people are asking is like, what's up with Magento right now? So if we go through it, I have a little bit of an agenda, because we all need it. I want to talk about the past, I want to talk about the present, and of course about the future, what we're trying to do. So if we think about the past, this is like the elephant in the room. COVID sucked. I really hated it. It took a huge toll on a lot of people. So there were no in-person events, which I guess everybody knew, but it was more than that, right? It was, you couldn't see your colleagues, all the coffee machine talk in the office didn't work. And I think it really took a toll on people. And a lot of those personal connections suffered. And I gave it a lot of thought also in our company, what exactly was going on. And it turns out that people, you know, everybody went into video meetings. Like who did video calls during COVID? Like everyone, right? The issue with that is you only made an appointment when there was a specific agenda to talk about something. You didn't ask how the weekend was or something like that. All those things like suffered. So this was really, really tough. And what we also figured out is that face-to-face talks is way better than FaceTime. You know, I know it's like it's a crooked way to try to circumvent it, but luckily I think we have this in check right now. And most of these things that you suffer from, they're subtle. They're hard to spot because they take time to develop, and things go bad, and friendships break up and stuff like that. So that was, I think it really took a toll on society, and especially communities like us, which live off events like this. And we have to admit that even developers are social beings. So even though most developers are kind of introvert by nature, they suffered as well. So that was really, really tough. In regard to Magento Association and Magento as a whole, if we take a look at the past plans, I don't know who's aware of that, but the original idea was we're going to hire a company, Smith Buckland, and what they do is they offer association as a service, as a platform. So you have very little organizational hassle. You just pay them a fixed amount, and they take care of everything an association needs to do, which sounds super great on paper. The issue was that, of course, Smith Buckland is just that. They're a company to run the association for you on an operational level. So they waited on input from both Adobe and the board. And the board that got elected was ambitious, but also kind of a little bit naive. And don't take this with like a negative connotation to it. Its naivety is something great. I don't know who has kids. I have a 9-year-old. She's stupid, right? She's cute, but she doesn't know things. She's naive. She tries things out. And just 2 weeks ago, we had the situation with the cooking plates. Like, what happens if I put my hand on a hot cooking plate? Well, guess what? We're going to see the doctor. That's what happens. And the board also waited for input from somewhere. So the board tried to talk to Adobe and tried to talk to the community and tried to talk to Smith Buckland. And Smith Buckland most of the time was just like, tell us what to do. So the situation we had was basically a deadlock. You know, like everybody was waiting for somebody else to start moving things forward. And then again, of course, COVID didn't really help much. And I think, I gave this a lot of thought where this came from, and I think this stemmed from Magento Inc. in the past, kind of leading the charge all the time. And in the terms of the Magento open source part, I could imagine, I don't know for sure, but I could imagine that Adobe was just thinking, well, the community takes care of these things, right? But maybe it was more Magento Inc. together with the community that actually pushed things forward. So if we take a look at the past actions that have been taken, and I know there's people that are kind of spiteful on social media and says nothing has been done. Well, that's kind of not true. So there was a blog with a lot of content that was managed all the time. Meet Magento events were managed. Well, given that during COVID there wasn't that much to manage. The website was managed, members were managed, elections were managed, you know, all the really boring stuff in an association because you have like bylaws and you need to abide to them and like tax returns need to be filed and stuff like that. So do you see the problem? It's just management, just operations. But there wasn't like a strategic narrative to be followed. And that's just the situation. And I'm not trying to get into a blame game, mainly because I don't think blaming people gets anyone anywhere. So what did we learn from that? Well, the first thing is the Magento part is too huge to be run just by volunteers with a couple hours of spare. You know, this was the original plan that I got told that everybody thought like, oh, well, 2 hours per week, that's sufficient to run Magento. Magento is way too big for that. Also, asking an association as a service company to come up with a vision was just short-sighted, I guess. You know, what Smith Buckland normally does, and I'm not here to bash Smith Buckland. They're really great at what they do. I just don't think they were a good fit. What they do is you run your nonprofit somewhere and they have fundraisers and they talk to sponsors and stuff like that, and they did a really good job at that. But they didn't provide a vision. And then the other problem was this deadlock situation. There was no clear vision, no goal, no where do we go from here? What do we do in the future? And I think it's important to admit that things went wrong in the past, and nobody's happy with that. But without admitting that there's a problem, how will you solve it? So that's basically the next step. So if we take a look at the present, like not a present, the present, in early December, Smith Buckland and Magento Association parted ways. We hired the first full-time employee for Magento Association, so a person that has no background in managing stuff, but mainly who's there full-time, talking to all committees, being a central point of contact, etc., that person being me. We hope to hire more people if we can grow Magento Association. And another big one is that all the committees that we have become more autonomous. So this was weird at first to me when I started attending all those committee meetings, is that the meetings were just going like, yeah, we're here for input. We don't take decisions. And I was like, what do you mean? You're the committee. You're the people in charge, elected to take decisions. And everybody was like, can we? Sure. That's what you're here for. And that's really great, and it's starting to pick up. Another thing that's new, so to speak, is that we have an absolutely clear agreement with Adobe on what we want to do. In the past, this was all just, yeah, how do you say it? Like everybody agreed, but nobody wrote it down. And I don't know who kind of does business and contracts. I'm a firm believer in, if everybody agrees, let's write it down. Because maybe in a year we no longer agree or we don't remember, and then it's good that we wrote it down. And this is a big one. So what we have together with Adobe is the specific task for Magento Association to help develop product placement for Magento, as opposed to Adobe Commerce. So, or not opposed, but like it's basically they coexist. And then there's a lot of people that I talk to that go like, well, in the past everything was better, and maybe it's me coming from the outside, so to speak. I don't see the difference, except for used to be Magento Community Edition and Magento Enterprise Edition. Nobody really had a say in what Magento Enterprise was becoming. But yet again, I think it's important to recognize that Adobe also sees the benefit in putting Magento in a certain spot in the market and work together with the community to make that happen. Yeah, so that's basically that part. And also, there's a target audience that we're working for and towards, and that's where we need a lot of help. So basically, you can see it a little bit like Magento Association is tasked to take over the open source marketing for Magento open source as well. So learnings from that, because I don't really think that a lot of people understand how huge this is that we can clearly say Adobe is committed to Magento. And I don't know who read, like, you know, there's a lot of social media posts out there like, Adobe doesn't care. I have the exact opposite to that in writing. So this is something we can definitely be sure of. Also, it's important to see that Magento Association is committed to Magento, which is a good thing, I guess. And this typo is going to haunt me, I guess. It also shows Magento is resilient. You know, there's a lot of people complaining about, oh, Magento is no longer this hot take in town and there's other things going on. I have a background in content management, and we went through the exact same process about 5 years ago. And through all the research, we came to one conclusion. It is that the technology of e-commerce is no longer a new thing. It's a commodity. I mean, who would create a business that sells anything without e-commerce today? It's not a question. The question isn't, do I do e-commerce? It's like, how do I do it? And that's wildly different. So there's no longer this massive rush. Everybody goes like, oh, it's this hot new thing, I need to do it. Right? Everybody does it. And I think that's an important realization. Also, Magento as a whole, we believe is ready to take the next big step in becoming, or not necessarily becoming, but retaining its position in the market. The ecosystem is incredibly strong. And it might be the case that some people are, you know, like working in their small, echo chamber is such a harsh term, but when you're used to having this great technology all the time, you just grow used to it. It's like for me, a smartphone isn't an amazing thing. I mean, I have all the knowledge of the world in the palm of my hand. What do? I look at cat photos. Another learning that's also important, it's a ton of work that needs to be done. However, we believe that it can be done. So that's where the community thinking kicks in and where we believe we can move forward. So the next steps into the future right now, what we're doing is we're going to revise the membership structure, because that has been set up kind of as a temporary solution that then became permanent. I don't know who has something like that in their code base. You know, some temporary workaround that, yeah, guilty. And what we're aiming to do is we want to localize the pricing of a membership for total global fairness. And this sounds like a very abstract thing to say, but I guess everybody agrees that there's difference in buying power across the globe, right? So if you create a membership for $1 a month, you're trying to accommodate for the person in Zimbabwe, for example, where $1 a month is actually a huge part of their business. On the other hand, if you offer a certain benefit to somebody who does commerce, and I guess that's all of us, they're going to take the $1 solution. You know, I get the same thing, cheapest solution available for the result. So what we aim to do is that the memberships will be calculated based on the local buying power of the country that you're in, which means if you have a lot of buying power in your country, it's going to be a higher amount in euro, for example. However, if you're from a country with a lower buying power, you can still afford it, and the financial impact on your business or your personal life is exactly the same. The good thing is that I already built something like that, so I know how to do it. Now, the only thing Magento Association needs is somebody who knows how to build e-commerce storefronts. Maybe somebody knows a person or two. We're also going to work on magento.com and magento.org, because in order to get the proper positioning for Magento done, as in the agreement, we need to be able to use that brand and promote the open source benefits while still showing a clear path towards Adobe Commerce in case those features are necessary. And I guess there's a lot of merchants who could benefit from the features that we have. Next thing we need to do is we need to regain trust from Adobe. We need to regain the trust from the community. This is also a learning, because MA didn't do a particularly great job at that in the past. You know, there was little communication, it was all very, it wasn't really that transparent in the past, and this is stuff we need to figure out. However, wait a minute, like, why do we need to gain trust from Adobe? That's a question that comes up a lot when I talk to the hardline, open source, passionate development person. Well, the idea is that we need more people in the community to use Magento. That's basically the promise the community gave towards Adobe. However, we also need to take the perspective from the outside. So imagine you're a developer, you're young, I don't know, 18, 19, just finished college or something, and you're looking for some career opportunity. So who has ever been on Twitter ranting about something in Magento that freaked them out? Like, I need to register a template at 3 different places. Like, okay, now put yourself in the position of that young person who just finished college. They go like, well, that doesn't sound very appealing, does it? So we all, and this is something where everybody can have a part in. So we need to provide a more positive tone towards Magento, and also towards Adobe, because that's what it is. It's one big family. And I think, and this is something that affects more society at large, we need to be more grateful for what we actually have. And I'm guilty of that as well. So yesterday I sat on the plane flying here, and I felt slightly angry that the Wi-Fi on the plane didn't work. And then it was like, I have Wi-Fi on a plane. You know, I'm sitting in a chair in the sky, you know? And I guess it's the same to technology and Magento, Adobe Commerce, this entire ecosystem. Look at what we have, and look at what we can achieve with what we have, and be a little grateful for that, and maybe registering like a template file in 2 XML files isn't that bad. No, yeah, it's annoying, but at least you know what you're doing. So I invite everyone that we try to do great things together as a whole community. I think having in-person events will help getting that surge back. And last but not least, how can you contribute if you want to? Well, we have the Community Council, which is an initiative by Adobe, together with developers, to determine which changes should go into Magento. It's pretty much open, and it's what people have been asking for years. The fun fact is, it's around for years. So this is where I take the learning from Magento Association. Well, maybe we didn't do a particularly great job about communicating that. We have the content committee. So if you're interested in promoting Magento, writing content for that, it's a ton of work because, like I said, the community is now in charge of that marketing, which also means, well, we kind of got to do it. You know, we cannot just say, somebody market Magento for us. That's where Adobe goes and says, like, well, you wanted it, now take it. And that makes total sense. And to me, it's a great deal of freedom. We have the event committee, which means we need to take care that Meet Magento events take place, that they take place in a meaningful way. But also, I think we should promote the local meetups that we have. And I don't know who actually knows that, but Adobe is providing the Meetup Pro subscriptions for Magento groups. And I guess not many people know that, and this is where Magento Association kicks in to be that connector to get that information out there. Because, you know, the people at Adobe that manage that community platform go like, well, nobody talks to us. And then we tried to figure out why that was, and it turns out, well, nobody knows that those people can be talked to. Very simple, very small changes that we can do. Like I said, marketing is something we need to take care of as a community, as a whole, of course, together with Adobe, because Adobe has an interest in growing Magento, such as we all do. It's not two separate things, it's one. And last but not least, development helps, because we need some stuff that is getting put onto the platform so that we can get Hub back, that we can get the membership management back, all those kind of things. So thank you for that, and I'm open to questions, but I don't know how much time I have.
Yes, we have a bit of time for questions.
Cool.
So before I hand the mic over, what I wanted to ask you is, what should the community, or who should the community look to for things like code updates, events, and everything else? Adobe or Magento Association? How is that divided in terms of responsibility?
If it has Magento in the name, it's Magento Association. If it has Adobe in the name, I guess it's Adobe. Kind of makes sense.
That's an easy enough rule to remember.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, questions. Who has questions?
Open mic here.
Good.
Hi there, this is Marius. One question though, I'm working with Magento for a long time, and it seems from the moment Adobe bought Magento, they changed the way they are doing the things for the community, and the community are doing things. You said Adobe is supporting this kind of communities, but how? I mean, I'm involved in this for a lot of years, and I see a lot of changes in terms of Magento development. Magento development become more and more difficult and more and more expensive. How Adobe is helping those communities?
Well, I guess the first thing that we need to just realize is that I've spent a lot of time talking to people at Adobe, and it turns out Adobe isn't really sure how to connect with the community. So, and that's a subtle difference. So you can either be not willing to engage with the community, or you just don't know how. And this is, and you see the one thing has like malicious intent behind it, the other one doesn't. And during our negotiations for the current agreement between Magento Association and Adobe, because there's some legal stuff like who holds the trademark, and can Magento Association give me Magento, which is a registered trademark, to Vlad and his team for something like that. That stuff we take care in those agreements. But it's also the situation that nobody at Adobe was really sure how to do it. And this is what we're currently figuring out together with Ritesh and Stanislas and Perul to make that happen. And the Community Council, that's actually the attempt that we have so that Adobe can get more, or the engineers at Adobe can get more feedback from the real world, quote unquote, to get this done. And that's why we need more people on that council. So especially if you say you have a lot of experience with Magento, that's where we need that input to make that work. I know it's a rather annoying process, and I think that when everything just got traction, we got the damn pandemic, which didn't help. And I also think that a lot of people confuse the objective lack of action with intent and not with a global pandemic. You know, I'm pretty sure, and I don't want to speak for Adobe here, but I guess that the last thing on their minds during a pandemic might be, okay, so how exactly do we figure this community thing out? And I'm not really angry at them for that. I can understand. I would be happier if it would have been different. But that's just what we do. And this is why we now take up a lot of traction to get that done. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, kind of. I really think it's different because they are approaching this community like corporate, and they should be more people, because community, it's about people.
Exactly. And the important thing is that when I talked to Ritesh and I talked for hours on end when I just signed up for the position. And Ritesh mainly said, like, help me understand these open source people. Because, you know, from a pure corporate perspective, open source makes no sense whatsoever. It's like you do something which creates a tremendous value and you just give it away for free. Like corporate goes like, why? And it's like, and we also have to see that there's, you know, we are doing open source for I don't know how long. So that's 25 years for me. I don't know how long each else here does. Who does open source stuff longer than 10 years? Well, I would have thought a little bit more, but right? But still, it's second nature to us. It's not second nature to corporate. So I'm part executive director, part couple therapist. Because I'm going like, hey, you need to take this perspective and understand, but also you guys need to take that perspective and try to understand so we can get together and get this moving. And this is, and like I said, I understand. For corporate, open source makes no sense. Why would somebody do that? And it's like we have understood that by giving something, we can get a lot more back than we gave. And there's friendship that have formed. I know people that got married out of open source stuff because they met at an event and maybe got massively drunk or something. But you know, that's how it works. So we need to get that spirit back.